Welcome to day 2 of our R&D Tax Summit, our 3-day digital event designed for accountants and advisors navigating the changing R&D tax landscape. Kicking off today, we're delighted to be joined by our guest panel to discuss the topic From Vision to Value, Success Stories from the Industry. Our panel today is Sarah Sparshott, Tax Director at WMT, Alex Falcon-Huerta, CEO and founder of Soaring Falcon Accountancy, and Stuart McBain, MD at Stuart McBain Limited, with our host today, Mike Dean, our co-founder and MD here at WhisperClaims. Before we get going, just a little bit of housekeeping, if you don't mind. We will be sharing resources potentially in the chat box as we go through the session. So if anybody does have any questions for the Q&A later on in the session, and we hope you do, because we would love to hear your questions, please can we urge you to use the Q&A box, which you'll find somewhere around the middle of your ribbon in your at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It just means that we won't miss any questions as we go through. That's it from me for now, and we look forward to hearing from you later on. Over to you, Mike.
Brilliant, thanks, Suze. So just quickly, before we get into the session, I just wanted to talk about the overall tax summit that we're running this week, and this is session 3 out of 6, so we're heading towards halfway through already. The reason that we've pulled this together is there's been obviously a lot of change to the legislation and to HMRC behaviour over the last 18 months or so, and a lot of talk about those structural changes, but actually very little talk out there about the impacts of those changes and perhaps how to mitigate for them and the strategies that people are currently deploying in the market. Of course, at the same time, many of you on this call will be fully aware of the kind of negative bubble and some of the negative messaging in social media around the scheme too. We wanted to take a much more sort of positive stance on the market and really get to grips with just how people are operating and moving forward. So that was the kind of motivation for doing this. As I say, we're more or less halfway through now the overall summit. So in terms of sessions that are coming up, this afternoon we've got a session with Richard Edwards from the R&D tax community, which is all about building competence in R&D tax. So Richard's going to be talking about education and training and the part that plays in the market. Tomorrow we've got a session in the morning, which is basically all about marketing services, particularly R&D tax. So I've got Joe Edwards from JE Consulting joining us for that session. And then in the afternoon, we'll be jumping into WhisperClaims and our own solution. So essentially a demo session for webinar 6 tomorrow afternoon. That will be myself and Suze driving that session. So if you've not seen any of those and you're interested in joining them, Suze will post up a link to the session there. Please do join us for any of those. So I'll just take my slides down and we'll get into today's session. So I'm really pleased to be joined by 3 customers of WhisperClaims today. And what I'd like to do is just get each of you to just give us a quick overview of who you are, the firm, maybe firm size, nature of the clients you've got, and the nature of your service offerings. So Sarah, can I come to you first?
Indeed. Morning, everyone. So I'm Sarah Sparshott from WMT Chartered Accountants. We're a small to medium firm providing tax, accounting and consultancy advice across a whole range of sectors. I wouldn't say that we are by any means a big player in the R&D market. We're probably doing somewhere between 20 and 30 claims a year for our clients at the moment, but it's something that we are organically growing, I would say, rather than actively marketing, but certainly organically growing.
And you've got a small team working on R&D as well?
Yes, that's right. We're a team. Our corporate tax team is there's 5 of us, and 3 of us work on the R&D claims together. So yeah, that's right.
Yeah, brilliant. Stuart?
Yeah, my name's Stuart McBain. I started Stuart McBain 31 years ago in Liverpool with no clients. We've now got around about 750. Similar to Sarah, it's just a general pool of people that we work for. I've got 8 members of staff, and I personally have been interested in renewable and sustainable energy for quite a long time. I picked up my first clients maybe 10 years ago that was in that space, and I was looking for some software. And then when I met Mike the first time, I said, this software does exactly what I'm looking for. And it's been a great relationship ever since then. I also grow things organically. I don't want to be, a big R&D practice. Is that we do between 5 and 10 a year. And most of those ones fall into either recycling, renewable energy, sustainability, those kind of areas. I've done 1 or 2 outside there, but I'm not really comfortable with them. And I'd just like to continue to slowly and organically grow the firm.
And you've got other business interests in that kind of sector as well, haven't you? So I guess that means you're familiar with those sorts of markets anyway, which has led you to.
Yeah. So I did an opportunity to maybe talk about other things, but I did a project 2 years ago which enabled me to drive around the coast of Australia in an electric car. I was the 26th person to do that, but what was different on my journey is that we teamed up with Newcastle University in New South Wales and took some printed solar panels with us to try and charge the car off grid in remote areas, which was the nature of the project. And I'm now personally growing a business which is about printed solar, so that the interest has grown somewhat.
Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. And Alex?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the webinar. So I'm the founder of Soaring Falcon Accountancy. So it's a micro business or lifestyle business, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit niche because I basically help clients from overseas launch into the UK, like from Australia or New Zealand, and predominantly they're tech or creatives, hence why I end up spending most of my time on R&D. And so I would just look after the UK, subsidiary or the parent company. So in terms of the client, the size, I have about 40 clients max. That's it. I keep it very, very small, but they're all kind of a large size, or what they're startup, and they've grown over the last 10 years. So in terms of R&D, I set up my business in 2015. And have been doing R&D like the whole of that time, like through Soaring Falcon. But prior to that, I have probably another 10 years of R&D experience where I worked with international clients behind the scenes as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing any expertise or knowledge around that. But and then finally, I do actually work with other accountants as well and help them with their R&D claims. So yeah, just to keep the advisory on the high end rather than the compliance.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Alex. So yesterday, the first session that we did yesterday was all about those legislative and structural changes to the market. And I don't want to necessarily sort of jump into covering those today, but I would just say, for the kind of purposes of the audience we've got on this call, if any of you missed that, we will be sending out recordings of all the sessions to everyone who's registered for these events, so you can delve into it at your leisure, perhaps separately. But my question for you guys, relating to the legislative changes, is thus far, how have those changes been affecting you? What's been the kind of impact on your firm and the way that you're operating, and maybe even the way that you're thinking about the market? So perhaps Alex, I'll come to you first on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, we're all keeping a close eye on what was happening in the changes, once we saw it in the budget. And then again, because they had multiple changes with not just the R&D, but other areas, I didn't want to just share that straight away with my clients, because I thought, well, they could just do a U-turn. It's just very unpredictable. So once they then launched it and confirmed that they're going to make the changes, I then prepared like a summary email to my clients to say, this is how it's going to impact you. So it's really difficult to make those changes in this financial year because it's already been done. So we're now having to plan what to do next year, and hopefully it's not going to change too much. But in terms of my client base, they have clients, they have staff and contractors overseas, as probably most of us do. They have subsidiaries and they have the developers overseas. So it's like quite a high risk area. And in terms of like the advice, it's in terms of what they need to do going forward. It's like, how do we change like the model of the business so that we can then look? It's not that we disagree with the tax that's due, because it's the UK is trying to protect their economy. It's the fact that we need to make changes to enhance their claim so they can continue as a business. or they can continue to develop, or they can continue with their projects. So I just did it in a summary format, but then attached like the links to all the detailed stuff, like too long don't read TLDR, because it's like complicated for everybody. But in terms of like the employment side of it and the contractors, is then like reshuffling things around to see how they can then essentially look for their staff in the UK. So it is quite significant.
And you took a really proactive approach to that then, in terms of communicating that out and not kind of leaving them to discover this stuff for themselves.
Yeah, well, it has a huge impact on cash flow. And so, when as soon as the year end is done, like we've already pre-prepared R&D. So as soon as the tax year is finished, or the financial year is finished, we will then look to finalize the technical justification, and then we get that submitted ASAP. So I think we try and get the claim in within 4 weeks after the year end. And so I think that's quite, when you look at cash flow and when you look to see like the impact on how that's going to be, or their run rate, it's really important that we try and get that amount in. So a significant difference, again, from 230% to 186%, that was already massive. So the impact that it's going to have now, if it's going to then be 50% less cash flow, then we have to factor that in. They can't necessarily rely on that cash flow to come into the company. So it is significant, and we have to be the advisors, and we have to be at the front end of that, and we have to make the changes, and we have to notify them of that, not get to the year end and go, oh, sorry, there's a massive change in legislation. You can't just go back and change it. It's already been done. So we have to do that ahead of time.
Yeah. Stuart, how about you? Is that a similar situation?
Yeah, I was going to focus on something slightly different, and it's in connection with conversations that you and I have had, and that I think that the R&D landscape was pretty much like the Wild West before all this legislation changes came in, and that there was a number of firms that had been set up. And it was interesting when I phoned you up and said that one of my clients has just been approached by, and you said the name of the firm, and that they were just peddling the most spurious of claims, and that I'm really grateful that that the legislation changes have come in, because it means that people's minds are a lot more focused on what is really R&D and what is just someone trying to get some free money. So just echoing what was said by Alex before about the legislation change in terms of the amount of cash flow that the claims result. That's something that's having to be managed, and that because we've only got a very small number, we have actually been less proactive, and it's almost as if we've discovered at the same time as the client has that, oh, you're not going to get as much for your project, even though you've spent the same amount of money and everything else seems to remain equal. You're just going to get less money this year. So they're my comments on the subject.
Have you been able to, sort of joining up a couple of things you said there, have you been able to kind of sell that message to clients because of that experience? You've seen that kind of negative behavior in the market, so you can explain to them why these changes have happened.
Yeah, it is as I said in my introduction, is that I don't tend to look at my clients and say which ones of these people could be possible candidates for R&D. It's almost as the client would come to me and said, oh, I've just been approached by this firm, and they say that I can get some money off the government. And when I stop laughing and say, well, what is it you're actually, why do you think that you're entitled to R&D, and explain it to them, and then explain exactly what you need to do in order to be able to go through the procedure now, they then sort of like, perhaps I'm not going to do this. And so previously, when it was the Wild West, is that I've had one client particularly that 100% not R&D got money off this organisation, thought it was great, paid through the nose for the service. I got involved with the actual agency, and they sent me a reassurance email that they hadn't told anything to HMRC, so they hadn't even done a report. They just literally taken a number off my accounts, put it in the relevant box, filed it, and was proud that they'd not told HMRC anything about the business. It was anyway. Let's not go down that route.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to that in a little while, actually. But Sarah, how about you?
Yes, so I think similar to Stuart's experience, I've found that clients have perhaps been a bit more cautious now, and they want to bring things in-house that previously they may have taken to one of these boutique firms. perhaps have the same client base as Alex, so the international aspects and the subcontracting hasn't been as relevant to me. I think for my clients, it's more, as Stuart said, just the reduction in the level of claim going forwards in terms of how much it will be worth to them. And I think it's interesting because I think you mentioned it yesterday, Mike, in one of the sessions, that if R&D was introduced today with the current rates and limits that we have under the merge scheme, and there'd never been a scheme in the past, we would all think it was a very valuable tax relief. It's only because we know what went before that we can see how less valuable it is compared to the past. So I think it's just trying to deliver that positive message to clients that this is still a really valuable relief, and if they are in the right business and they're doing the right things, it's still absolutely worth claiming. But I think the smaller claims will drop off now because it just becomes less cost effective to do the work to make the claim, really.
And do you think these changes have resulted, I mean, sort of joining up with what Stuart said here, have resulted in changes to the industry? So, you know, have you seen, for instance, are you getting clients coming along saying, I used to work with X, but now they've pulled out of the market? So, you know, has this squeeze resulted in certain providers disappearing, or perhaps
I think in my sort of fairly limited experience, yes, certainly we've had people come to us that have said that, and there are definitely firms that are backing out altogether or that are not dealing with certain sectors. So yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, is that a thing with you, Stuart, as well?
I think that my sample size is a little bit too small to be able to make a meaningful comment on it. Is that I have noticed there's been there's not as many people phoning me up now saying, can I provide R&D services to your clients, whereas it was like literally once a week since the legislation changes. That's the biggest change I've noticed. But in terms of anecdotally being able to say for sure, I don't know. So I think my gut feeling is that the legislation has done a good thing because it's dissuaded the less straightforward firms.
Yeah. I guess it's slightly different for you, Alex, because your customer base is relatively small and you're delivering a kind of full service to those people. So maybe you don't get quite so exposed to those third parties coming knocking on the door.
I mean, no. So I guess what's actually happening, I mean, I have other accountants come to me that have used like the other firms, like the boutique firms, but they're the ones that come to me and I have to fix them and I have to resolve all of the issues. And so
it's unwinding the bad behavior from previous.
Yeah, it is. And when they realize, like, I do things like I have like attention to detail and I do things quite in depth and my process is really long, but the fact is it's there for a reason. It has to be, because you need to match the legislation. And a lot of the the people like that were not with me prior from the very beginning, and I read their story. It is their story and it's not a justification. And I think that's why it keeps failing, because they don't have the actual true real advice to actually do the claim that they need to actually put into HMRC. So HMRC don't care about story. They care about the innovation that you're trying to submit to them. And so we were talking about like the changes, and I think in terms of the changes from like previous years, and people were seeing like redundancies and within the tech industry, and it's like they didn't put the two and two together about the change of tax and the legislation, whereas it's probably going to happen again. Like there's probably going to be a reduction in headcount because they now have to pay UK salaries, and as much as we're having remote working and people working overseas, those salaries are aligning, and because people can pretty much be based anywhere. And so the taxes, to get the relief, you need to pay tax in the UK. And so you'll see a fall in headcount in terms of like developers, because they have to be proactive and start thinking about the cash that they're going to receive. So a developer, which they had 150,000 for, they're only going to get, say, 10 or 15,000 or whatever it is for them, instead of like 50,000. So it's something that they have to consider going forward, and how they're going to afford that person.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be easy to sort of drag ourselves into a black hole around that, but it is obvious, isn't it, that the implications of some of these changes haven't necessarily been thoroughly thought through. And whilst, I definitely welcome the fact that there's stability going forward, or at least has been declared that, there won't be any more changes for some time, and that feels like a good thing. that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree that the changes have all been positive, but I think looking forward, stability will definitely be good. Now, I just wanted to kind of come back to what Stuart was talking about, which was a sort of particularly bad behaviour in the market. And I'm just going to put up a quick poll for the audience. Just bear with me a second. This will just take a second or two to come up. Can you see that, Suze? Yeah. So what I'm asking here is, this is just a question for the audience. Have you seen any examples of bad practice or worse amongst your customer base? And it's just a single choice, just a yes, no. And just while people are responding to that, Stuart, would you mind just sort of expanding a little bit on that particularly bad experience that you had with a client? No names.
Yeah, no names. So
it's just interesting to talk about some of these examples and how they manifest themselves.
So the person in question was running a daycare centre for children. Effectively, she was a nanny. She was fully registered and ran the business properly, and she was approached by a certain company whose name will not be mentioned, and that they contacted me via the client to get a copy of the previous year's tax return. They took the figure, which was to do with training, just took the number straight off the statutory accounts and made a claim. And as I was saying before, they didn't do a report, they didn't tell the person or ask any questions whatsoever. And that when I cross-examined them, being sort of like naive and stupid, but basically trying to get information from them, they were very, very proud in as much as they said, we haven't told HMRC anything. So that they literally just took the number off my statutory accounts, put it on the corporation tax return, and reclaimed the money, and then took quite a large fee for the services. It must have taken them all.
That did go. I mean, I can't remember with the timing of this, but it was probably 2 years ago, isn't it? Two years or more ago that happened. But that did actually go through, didn't it? So they got the money, yeah. They got the money. And what was I remember a difficult conversation that you and I had at the time. What was your response to that? So how did you deal with that with the client?
I just said to the client categorically, I imagine that this is probably fraud, because there's absolutely no justification whatsoever. And because I am the agent, is if HMRC open an inquiry, I don't want to have to explain to them that it was somebody. I mean, they'd understand that it wasn't me that filed the return, and it was clear who had filed the return, because they actually they never bothered to become agents. They didn't need to anyway, and they just put in a paper amended return, and had the check then sent to themselves.
Yeah.
So that I said to the clients, I said, you've got two options really. Is that I disengage, or you give the money back? And she said, no, I'm keeping the money. And so I said, all right, fair enough. So I disengaged.
Yeah.
I was so tempted to contact HMRC, but there's something within you that says that you just don't grasp.
And out of Alex, I can see you nodding there. You mentioned unraveling situations for clients. Have you had anything as kind of extreme as that?
I have seen in the past people make up figures, again, similar thing, and just no justification. I think back in the day, it was easy for people to just make up figures and become fraudulent. They were not my clients, and they're the ones I didn't take on. So it's just, I'm not going to risk my license to do things like that, but I have seen them. And you do often get people say, oh, can I put this through? Can I put that through? And they just try and put as much as they can through. But essentially, that's why we have this new legislation, because obviously with COVID and all the loss of income, and it's made the government look at areas where they can reclaim money. So,
in Stuart's case, and the reason why I sort of picked on it, Stuart, is because it's a really good example of some of the very specific changes. So the AIF, the introduction of the AIF, which is asking about right at the top, SIC codes. Immediately, alarm bells are ringing there. It's a daycare facility. Clearly, it's highly unlikely there's going to be any eligibility there. One of the other filters, of course, in the AIF is who is putting the claim together. And again, big red flags there because of certain providers out there that we know HMRC have got an eye on. So you know, it just brings out why these changes have been so important and the impact that they're likely to have going forward. And any examples from you, Sarah, like that?
Yeah, I have actually. I've got a similar story to Stuart's to share, and I wouldn't mind betting, Stuart, that we might be talking about the same the same boutique firm. Our client was in a not dissimilar sector to the one that you talked about. But in this case, the client was new to us. They came to us with this claim having already been made. But at their very first meeting with us, they expressed concern about the claim. They weren't comfortable with it. They didn't feel it had been dealt with properly. They had literally had a cold call from this boutique firm convincing them that they were eligible to make a claim, and almost hoodwinked into doing so. I think, you know, the next thing they knew, a bit like you, a number had been plucked out of the accounts and a claim had been submitted based on said number with no supporting report or backup. And the money literally just arrived in their bank account, and they felt uncomfortable about receiving it ever since. In fact, to the point where they hadn't spent it, they'd just put it aside and sought a second opinion, which was where we came in. And we did confirm that we agreed with them that it wasn't an eligible claim. And in fact, we're currently in the process of doing a voluntary disclosure for them to pay that money back. So, you know, it's slightly different angle to you in that we didn't have to disengage because they'd come to us knowing almost that the claim didn't feel right. But really unbelievable, actually, the way it had played out and the way it had happened and how easy it had been for this money to arrive in their bank account.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd asked the question there of the audience. We've had what we had there, 14 responses, 9 people are saying yes, 5 people are saying no. I guess on the no side, and I've run this poll before, a couple of times before actually, and both of the other times we've virtually got nobody saying yes. We've got a couple of people saying yes, and interestingly, I think in fact somebody else has just come in and said yes now, so prompted them to do that. You know, I guess there's heightened awareness because of all of these changes of this kind of behaviour, and no doubt that's why that's kind of reflected in the answer there. So given the changes from HMRC and the motivation for those changes are sort of resulting in some shifts in the market. We're seeing, as we've already mentioned, a number of service providers dropping out of the market completely, and certainly service providers focusing on different areas, maybe pulling out of certain sectors, maybe only working with clients of a certain size. But what you know, that really is mainly affecting boutiques and affecting boutiques who perhaps had were perhaps on the edge of the market. What are your feelings about what HMRC's expectations are of firms like yours? What do you think HMRC are expecting your response to be these changes? Sarah, have you got any feelings about that?
So no, really. I mean, we've always any claims we've submitted have always been supported by a full report, numbers, technical narrative. So in a sense, nothing we're doing has really changed in terms of what we are still delivering to HMRC and what we were delivering to HMRC. We have a pretty good record, and I'm touching wood as I say it, in terms of inquiries. You know, I've not seen an R&D inquiry yet in my time doing. We must be doing well on anything. You know, we don't take risks. We're very safe in terms of the claims we submit. So for us, day to day, I don't think the changes have really altered the way we're approaching the claims. Sorry, that perhaps isn't quite the question you asked, Mike, but I don't know whether that.
No, actually, to be honest, it's exactly what I kind of hoped you'd say, because you know, I do kind of feel, interesting to hear what the other guys think, that you know, your roles in the accounting profession haven't really changed. I think that is the point. That, you know, there's a group of how can I put it here, sort of honest brokers, if you like, and you know, you are all three of you are respected advisors as far as your clients are concerned, And I wonder, therefore, if you're seeing, as a question I'll pose to Stuart, are you seeing more clients reaching out for support maybe than they have before? So, you know, rather than R&D being a thing that you go out and sell, is it something that's more reactive, that people are looking to you and saying, actually, Stuart, can you help me with this?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of word of mouth. Is that the types of people, as I said before, was mainly specialising, if that's the right way of looking at it, people who are in the renewable energy sector, and it's they'll speak to their friends, and so I'll get someone phoning up and saying, you know, you've done a claim for this person, can you come and do mine for me? And I'm quite happy for that. I think Sarah said, use the word organic growth. I'm quite happy for the growth to be organic. I don't want to go and pursue it. Just coming back to what we said before about the new AIF and the legislation in general. When I first started doing R&D claims, is I started by producing a full report, and hence when I met yourself and got the software in place, and it came as quite a surprise to me to find out later on is that there was no requirement previously to put a report in, and that you could literally just put a number on a return, and HMRC. Came as quite a surprise that was the case, and so it's almost as if I started from where we are now, went through a period of realizing that it wasn't as tough as I thought it was, and that now we're back to where I started from in the first place. And that I can't say enough is I think that it's good, because it will get rid of the types of firms that I was talking about before, because they're stuck at the AIF. If they can't produce an AIF, how are they going to be able to pursue a claim?
Yeah, although I must admit, I've heard how people are getting around all of that, but won't go into that here. Same firm again that we mentioned earlier on, or didn't mention, but anyway. But you know, I guess this is something that we've talked about before. If somebody's a fraudster and a criminal, they're always a fraudster and a criminal, aren't they? And they'll find ways. And
Can I just
at least the net's closing, so that's good.
Can I just add something else as well? It's just to what Sarah was saying is that I the very first R&D claim I did was a previous firm, and an inquiry had been opened, and so my very first experience with R&D was from an inquiry point of view, and I've had 3 inquiries over the last 10 years, and I welcome them, because that's when you learn R&D. That's when you do understand the detail of it. Is that when you've got an inspector on the other side asking you all kinds of questions, and that's when you really do need to understand and know your stuff. I always welcome an inquiry, regardless of what the outcome is. As obviously you want it to go well, but when it goes badly, is that you learn from it. So I just like to add that to the conversation. As I don't think any of us have got anything to fear from inspections, and in fact, what it did was reassure the very high caliber of the people that were actually doing the work. And the particular, I'm just thinking about the last inquiry I had, is that the inspector was a really nice person, almost put him on my Christmas card list, you know, that kind of approach. So that I'd say, you know, Sarah, is if that lesser comes, because invariably it will come at one stage. Just don't see it as a bad thing. Just see it as being a good thing.
Fascinating. Have you got experience of that, Alex? Have you had any inquiries? Have you dealt with any?
So I mean, I'm going to disagree slightly in terms of the change that it has had on us as advisors. And the reason being is because obviously prior that most people could have probably submitted a claim. But I think what it's done now is it's allowing us to actually be the advisor. It's allowing us to actually take the data from HMRC and to interpret that data and use our skill set, what we've trained to do, to interpret that back to HMRC and obviously with the forms and things like that. So not anyone can just do that, which I think which is the point that we're making. So it actually, people will then start to come to us more, because they'll see, right, this is like expert work. We can't just go randomly fill out a form like a lot of people think that they can do, that they do need to come to the expert to complete that. And so in terms of like the claims and the R&D things, so HMRC are questioning technical justifications, and they're questioning the figures maybe later on, and it allows us to then interpret that, go back to them and confirm to them, actually this relates to this relates to this. Again, not anyone can just go and do that, but it's actually HMRC like enforcing the legislation and the law, and actually saying, right, is this a genuine claim? Can this actually be submitted? But somebody else might not know how to answer that. And I've come across that quite a few times where I've helped other accountants, and that's where we step in. So I think, our role has changed, because we're now able to do what we're supposed to do. And so we would then get those letters, we'll confirm and write back to them, and then ultimately that client will then get their cash back or their claim is unsuccessful. But somebody else outside of that who doesn't understand it will not really answer it correctly, and then essentially they'll fail. So I think we have had a significant change, and it's in a positive way, because it just means people will then rely on us.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect lead into my next question, I think, which is, given all of this complexity. I mean, the scheme is meant to have been simplified, but actually at the minute we're left with a huge amount of complexity and have been going through a period of uncertainty too. I'm interested in, why is it that you've each chosen to be in this market and not to outsource, but you've chosen to deliver this as a service line yourselves? So, I mean, Alex, I'll come to you first on that, just because I think that's a kind of continuation of the point you were making. Why have you made that choice and you're not outsourcing it, you're doing it yourself?
Yeah, sure. I guess like it goes back to, I don't know, like 20 odd years ago when I used to do the claims, and the company that I work for, they outsourced it. And it used to come back to me and I just used to literally rip it apart. And I'm like, well, because I can read the legislation, interpret it myself. And it's just an area that I just find easy to learn and understand quickly. And so I used to go back to those companies and go, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I just found that quite surprising that that's what would happen. But I didn't realize at the time that's, again, without trying to be negative, that's what they were trying to do. They were just putting anything together and be successful with that claim and then just get a massive fee. Obviously, it's an opportunity. So I've got my own business. And so I need to look at ways to make profit. And if I can then do those myself as a qualified accountant, as a tax specialist, then of course I'm going to implement that into my services. Where I have tried to use other people, I've then ripped them apart again, and I just don't trust what they do. And so I'd rather do it in-house, because at the end of the day, it's my name on the door and I have to sign off that paperwork, and I'm not going to risk my license.
Yeah. I see you nodding there, Stuart. Do you agree with that?
Sorry?
I could see you nodding there as Alex was talking.
Yeah, so the approach that I've taken is that it was an area of interest for me, so that the types of people that I was working for, in my mind, is that especially over the last few years, is that the drive towards renewable and sustainable energy is clearly an area of research and development. Although as time progresses, is that you'd say, well, you're in an area which is about research and development, but is actually what you're now doing, is that now just competitor advantage, or is it just, does it fall outside of what R&D is anymore? Originally it was, but then you've got to a stage where you're not actually producing anything. You're just working in an industry which has the appearance of being something which is all about research, innovation, and development.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think, because you've got that kind of market specialism going on, that your clients expect you to be able to do this? They would expect you to be able to service their
I just think that's a sort of maybe even just a wider question or statement for accountants in general, is that your clients expect you to know what you're talking about. And so therefore, when they come to talk to you about R&D, they don't see that as any different from asking you about PAYE or VAT or corporation tax returns. So I think that generally I can't remember who I was talking to, but over the last few years there's sort of the three people that clients should go to: the bank manager, the lawyer, and the accountant. Bank managers don't exist anymore, so they don't go. Lawyers are priced themselves out of the market, and so you as the accountant then becomes that pillar of society that everybody wants to speak to, and you need to know about all these kind of things. And so I just think that it's just assumed that when clients come to you that you know all this stuff.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Does that ring a bell with you, Sarah?
Does. I mean, that's kind of what I was going to say, really. I think clients see us as so much more than an accountant. We're their business advisors. We're almost part of their organization. And I think it would almost be weird if we didn't help them with the R&D, having spotted the opportunity. So our audit team might be out on an audit and identify a client that's, carrying out R&D, and it would almost be weird if that didn't then come to me to to review and advise on. I think it's they expect us to be able to give them the whole piece, you know, and help them with everything. And so that's for me, it's not that I have any particular kind of interest, I suppose, in that market. It's just that it's almost been I've ended up there because our clients need it.
Yeah, that makes
sense. And I just think, as I said, it's the whole piece, isn't it? It would be strange if we said, oh well, we've identified this opportunity, but we don't actually know how to help you with it, so we're going to send you off somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I just add something to that as well. Like when you do the technical justification and when you do the R&D, you learn so much about that client.
Yeah, there's a depth of relationship.
Yeah, I agree.
You wouldn't otherwise have that deeper conversation, would you? You've got to go further in that conversation than perhaps you would in any other area of the business. And I must admit, you know, we find obviously our software gives the user the ability to essentially work through a diagnostic process with the client, which may or may not end up in there being a claim at the end of the day. And we often hear people kind of reflecting back to us that actually they got huge value out of using the software to say no, you know, to actually take people to
absolutely, yeah.
And there's no claim. I mean, it doesn't help us because our business model, of course, is all about downloading claims. But you know, it does just show where that value add is for you guys, that having that deep conversation, demonstrating why somebody isn't eligible, has almost just as much value as the opposite at the end of the day. Which actually brings me neatly onto a question about technology. So obviously we're a technology business. We've delivered software. You guys are all using it. How important has the technology been in helping you to deliver this service? I'll come to you first, Sarah, on that.
Well, it's been brilliant. I mean, I think what it's done is we're a relatively small team, and it's just given us that additional layer of confidence when we're when we're having the conversation actually with the client, you know, the initial conversation, the whole way in which the client can be invited into the software as a collaborator and help write the technical narrative has been really helpful. And the risk bit on there, you know, the bit that kind of goes red if something might not be quite right, is really helpful. It's just given us much more confidence in the claims that we're putting in, and in a good way actually. It's making us realize that what we were doing was already okay, but it's just given us that extra comfort with the claims that we've been making.
When we first sort of got our heads together, that one of the things you were looking for was efficiency as well, in terms of being able to do this.
That's right. Yeah, and it's definitely, I mean, I feel perhaps previously we were reinventing the wheel every time we did a claim. And there are so many elements of a claim that are common to many clients, and the software is certainly helping us to pull out those elements, I think, and to put the right bits into each narrative. Bespoke for the client, but yeah, definitely save time.
Brilliant. And Stuart, obviously, as you said earlier on, you were already doing claims for a good number of years before we met. Is that a kind of similar experience for you? That was more about
I was going to focus on the interview style of the software. I really like that. And again, I remember making some comments to you a couple of years ago about the result. Originally, the result of what you had didn't really reflect the amount of work that was being put into the interview process. And I know that you've changed the software. I'm sure other people have made the same comments to you. I don't think it was just me, but I really like that, because I think it was Sarah that said is that it strengthens the relationship with the client. You know a lot more about their business and how it operates, and that in itself can only be a good thing. Is that, you know, having a stronger relationship with the client is always going to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, you're a relatively new customer of ours. So what sort of brought you to looking at technology? What were you kind of looking for when you were out there looking at the market and figuring out what tools were around?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did check out quite a few tools, and essentially, I mean, I still do old school way. Like I'll still do it all manually, because that's just again, like I love technology, I love software, but I think when it comes to our work, even when it comes to like tax computations and things like that, it's important for me to know that I've done it, that I've calculated it all before, then I add it into the software. And I'm like that with all of my client work. It's like people when they have like a bookkeeping set zero or something, and it's like everyone thinks that anyone can use it, but I think essentially it's like the software there is to enhance and to make better your work. And so I looked at something that was going to essentially look more professional when I submitted it to HMRC. And so when I looked at the product at WhisperClaim, I was like, great, I can actually add all my stuff in there, and it's going to give me a really nice report with all the information in there. And then the technical justification side meant that it was kind of user friendly for the client, and they can go in and answer all the questions, but I can then check it and review it. But also I've done my work in the background as well. So I think it needs like a combination. So again, like it gives it like a really professional look to HMRC and with all the correct data. And then I have my backup. So it was just essentially to make it a bit more efficient. And so, it's having all the data in one place rather than all on spreadsheets and printing off reports and attaching that to the CT 600.
I guess the reality for you, you as a firm, you are definitely kind of portrayed as tech savvy, so you're deploying tech right across your firm. So I guess it's inevitable that R&D, if you're delivering an R&D service, you would have looked at tech in that arena as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I looked at loads of products, but it's like any software, they all have like bugs and stuff. And so it's something that I'm really hot at checking. And so it's like, if I find something, like I notice it straight away. And again, like I love tech, but I always want to make sure that it's all being done correctly. So that's why I do my manual checks first. And then I put it onto the software, like payroll as well. It's the same principle, management accounts and things like that. So yeah, I still have to do it, so I know that it's done right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm partly glad you mentioned bugs, because you joined us during this time of huge change, and of course we've had to put an awful lot of effort into the software itself to keep ahead of the HMRC changes and so on. And I remember that in the first couple of weeks of you working with us, you found some bugs in what we were doing as well. So thanks for that.
I love finding bugs though, but it's because then I'm like, I'm part of the change.
Exactly. And just a sort of last point on all of that and our sort of service offering. Of course, at the end of the day, it's not just about technology. I think if we just launched a software platform and left it at that, that wouldn't be the entire answer. And I know all of you over the period you've been working with us have accessed our support as well. So Sarah, I'll just come to you. Is it important to you to have that kind of shoulder to lean on when it comes to technical expertise, as well as having the structure through the software?
Absolutely. Yeah, really important. And that kind of chat function in the software is brilliant. I've used it several times for sometimes fairly generic, they're sometimes a more general query rather than specific to one particular claim. Really good response times, really good answers. And yeah, it's just that layer of comfort and confidence that you put in your claim in correctly. So yeah, that's for me, that's as important as the ability to produce the reports. And yeah,
cool. Stu, you're on mute. Is that the same for you, Stuart?
Well, I just phone you and you're very accommodating.
That's true.
I think it's probably something to do with my character, is just that I like to try and work things out for myself, and that it's always a last resort. It's sort of like, when someone's offering help, is like, you feel as if it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, that I don't know, I don't need help, I'll sort it out, I'll work it out for myself. And I think that what's happening slowly as I'm getting older is you realize you don't know everything, and that sometimes trying to research it for yourself is a lot longer than actually phoning up someone or using a system to get the right answer. So I will be using this a lot more, and I won't be phoning you anymore.
Excellent. And Alex, I know you've definitely had some great interactions with Jen through the helpline. Interestingly, in what you said about the way you sort of deploy your service and the way you use the software, I think it's often been at that kind of end of the process where there's been a query about numbers maybe, and kind of doing that final check and making sure that you're confident in the numbers before they go into HMRC.
Yeah, no, exactly. But like you were saying, it's not just like if you with the software and then you have like the support behind it, it's obviously really good. And the community around the R&D that you guys provide, then that's the bit that makes it more helpful, because we all have like funny, weird, odd things that happen with certain clients. And it's just having that community around us that we can go, right, guys, what do you think about this? And everybody.
Has anyone else experienced it?
Yeah, and somebody else has experienced it, or we can step in and support those people. So yeah, I definitely feel that that's what differentiates you guys from the others, because essentially, like, not everybody does R&D, not really everybody understands it. And I know I joke and I say I don't recommend WhisperClaim, but it's just genuinely because I feel like I'm the person that should do the R&D claim.
Yeah.
And so, but just it's like there is like a community feel, and so I think that part I find like really supportive, and that's what stands out for me.
Yeah, excellent. Brilliant. Well, I'm conscious of time. Have we had any Q&As coming in, Sue, so that we can have a look at?
Yeah, we've had some great questions, and I've already popped a note up, but if anybody has any more just over the next 10 minutes or so, please pop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them. So first one I've got is it's a question about what are the whistleblowing responsibilities where an accountant discovers error or fraud with an R&D tax claim?
Ooh.
I think it's I can't remember the bodies now, like right at the top of my head, but I guess, yeah, you have to, like, as anti-money laundering and things like that, you have to report it and not, obviously not share that you've done that. I can't remember the name of the body, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take on an answer to that. We, I mean, prior to all of these sort of stories that we've covered off today, we came across two really quite extreme cases of fraud. I probably can't say too much about them, but one in particular was a completely made up accountancy firm that we were approached by, who were clearly looking to put fraudulent claims together, and we reported both of these cases directly to HMRC. And I had quite a funny conversation with an inspector at HMRC who said, "Now you've reported this, this gets passed to the rockstar team in HMRC, the guys who've got the exciting job to go and do the investigation into all." So you can and perhaps should, especially if you see something really extreme, and the particular cases I'm referring to here were really bad. You should report them. And there is a I'm going to do what you've just done, Alex, as well. I can't remember it either, but there is on the HMRC site, there is a mechanism to report bad behaviour. Sorry, Stuart, what was that?
Is it called NSIS, National Criminal Inquiry Service, or something like that?
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah. I think that's
right. So I put in an NSIS report a couple of years ago now, and so it's a bit woolly really, because what they say is if no one replies back within 30 days or something like that, just carry on doing what you're doing. So that I put a report in, nothing to do with R&D. Yeah. I put a report in a couple of years ago, nothing to do with R&D. I've still not heard back from them, so I've just carry on as normal. And it leaves a really, really unpleasant feeling, because you don't know, just because you've got a receipt to say that your email has been received by them, you don't really know whether someone's read it and someone's looking at it, or 3 or 4 years later they come back and say, "You've been complicit with this fraud," and I'm going, "No, I'm just following your legislation. What the rulings are is that it says categorically, if I don't hear from you, just carry on." Yeah. So
we did say report people over COVID.
Right.
Well, you had the same experiences, did you, Alex?
Yeah.
We're reporting and then heard nothing back.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's really not good.
The one or the two that I'm referring to was different in the sense that there was an interaction. I actually got interviewed in both cases, and In both cases, I was given a choice and, dare I say, a recommendation of, would you want to appear as a witness if this, went right the way through to a full investigation and a trial? And in both cases, the question was asked, would you be willing to? And would you be willing to provide evidence? And then the statement was made, and if I were you, I would say no to that question and just leave it to us was the way it was kind of left. So maybe there's an element of that in what you've said there, Stuart. Any other questions, Sue?
I've got a few more. So I think you guys have kind of touched on the fact that you use the collaboration feature, but it'd be interesting to hear what you say to this question. So how do your customers feel about you using tech to do this type of work? And do your customers know that you use the software?
So with the software,
Yes,
oh, sorry. With the software,
no, carry on, Alex.
Yeah, you have to invite them as a collaborator. Because they have to then answer the questions for the technical justification. And as I mentioned earlier, like I actually do all my workings manually first, and then I put that data into the software. People might think I'm a bit crazy, but I just do it for my own benefit because I need to explain that to HMRC. But they don't mind it. I have all tech clients, and if I didn't use tech, they would kill me.
How about you, Sarah? Same?
Yeah, no, I was going to say similar, really, that absolutely when you invite them in, they're aware that they're being invited into a technical product to write into, and yeah, we've not had any pushback on that. People have been very happy to engage in that way, and they like the report that they get at the end and that they see at the end. So we've had nothing but positive feedback actually so far.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, so that the small number of people that we do the work for, fortunately, they're geographically very close to Liverpool, and so that they actually come in and sit down with me, and I go through the interview together. And as I've said earlier a few times, I find that part incredible because it really gets me to focus and understand is what this person's technology is all about. So perhaps as I'm working more and more remotely, is that I'll start using the collaboration approach. I haven't used it yet, but from what Sarah and Alex have said, it sounds like it works just as well as a face-to-face meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So I've got another interesting question here. What can I do if a customer of mine thinks that my service is too expensive and has been sold a far cheaper option with a provider that I've never heard of?
Yeah, goodbye is quite an easy term, comes to mind.
If somebody is obviously offering a cheaper service, I mean, by all means, go and use them. It's absolutely fine. But when it all goes wrong, they'll be coming back, and it's about fixing it. So yeah, it is a challenge. But you're the advisor, and if they see that your fee is too expensive, then they're not really valuing what you do. So I think it's probably not a good client for you.
Just going a bit further on pricing, have any of you changed the way you price for R&D? So traditionally, obviously, there was a contingent model, quite high fees for the boutiques who would include inquiry defence in their fees, for example. Have you seen a sort of shift away from those models to something else? Sarah?
I mean, certainly for us, that was never our model. So our model has always been a time-based fee. We'll usually quote in advance based on the quality of the information that the client is providing and how complex we think the claim has been. So we've never been we will take 10%, 15%, whatever it might be, of your claim. I know that's what the vast majority of the boutiques do, but it's certainly on smaller claims that does make it difficult for us to compete, but on the larger ones our pricing still comes out very competitively, I think, and so we're happy with that model, and we've got no plans to change how we do that. And we don't separately bill the Whisper element, so we just wrap that up in our complete fee, so the client doesn't see that as a separate line on their bill. The report download fee is just part and parcel of what we charge to them.
Irrespective of how you price, that all of you as accountants offering a broad service, you've got the advantage over the boutiques in the sense that you're providing this service to generally existing clients to whom you're providing a portfolio of services. So that in itself gives you a little bit of well, gives you a good few advantages, doesn't it? There's a whole thing about being close to the client.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for us, it's all about the existing clients. We're not in the market for pure R&D clients. It's very much about just being able to service our existing clients.
Yeah, cool. And any comments there, Stuart?
I have I have a hybrid approach. I have some fixed fees, and then some of them I have a scaling system. So I'll start with a percentage, and then as the claim gets bigger, it comes down. So I've kind of taken that approach. Just actually discussing fees and types of fees with my clients and what works best. And obviously I'm in business, and it's my skill set that that they're utilizing. So I do feel like there's an element where it should be paid for, obviously, and just taking advantage of what the market offers. So, yeah.
Cool. How about you, Stu? How do you do?
We just to take the boutique approach and just a percentage of the claim, and people like that, so that because they know where they stand. But that just rolls out more generally within my accountancy practices. Everything we do is on a fixed fee basis. And so that, as far as we're concerned, is that if it takes us less time, that's our gain. If it takes us more time, well, that's our loss. And that's just the approach that I've taken for years, and it works quite well because everybody knows where they stand.
Cool. I'm conscious of time, so
just take a
headline.
Right up to 11. So we did have another couple of questions, but I think they've kind of been covered in the discussion already today. So I think all that's left to say is to our panel, thank you ever so much for your really valuable time today. Your contribution has been fantastic. Mike, any final words from yourself?
Only to just go back to the point we made at the start that we're now halfway through the summit. We've got 3 sessions to go over the next day and a half. So please do take a look at what's involved in those sessions. You've seen the link already, and it'd be great to see you there over the next day and a half. And thanks very much for coming along today. And thanks to everyone on the panel as well for your contributions. It's been fantastic.